Godzilla is back in the newest entry in the MonsterVerse, Monarch: Legacy of the Monsters. I've been waiting for this show for a while, as well as Godzilla Minus One, which comes out next month. But we have 10 episodes of this series to look forward to, with the first two having premiered last week. And the first two episodes were really good. I don't think they even needed to put out the first two. The first one was exciting on its own. Now, while I don't believe that we'll see Kong in this series, it does tie in, as one of the main characters is a young version of Bill Randa from Kong Skull Island. In fact, episode 1 opens up with the events of that film, showing Randa dropping a bag of tapes he had filmed in the sea, and miraculously, they are found in Japan in 2013, a year before the events of Godzilla. But before I talk about the present-day storyline, let's go to the Philippines in 1952, where Lieutenant Lee Shaw with the US Army is assigned to protect a Japanese scientist named Keiko Miura, who he is initially shocked to find out is a woman. And to be fair, I'd imagine that she seems very adventurous and forthcoming for a Japanese woman in the 1950s. The two head to the Philippines to follow a trail of evidence that Keiko hopes will lead her to a titan. While in the jungle, they meet Bill Randa, who at the time is a cryptozoologist working for Monarch. Now Lee, being a simple but skeptical army man, doesn't believe in the existence of titans and leaves the two initially, only to come back to save them when they get trapped on the USS Lawton, the same ship that Randa served on when it was attacked by the Ion Dragon in 1942, with him being the only survivor and that encounter leading him to want to join Monarch. Now, the Ion Dragon is just what Randa calls this titan. It's probably not the official Monarch designation. Flash forward to Kazakhstan, 1959. Bill Randa, with his now wife Keiko Randa and their friend/bodyguard Lee Shaw, are searching for proof that an underground network exists proving that titans are somehow connected to the Hollow Earth theory. Bill and Keiko are currently working for Monarch while Lee still works for the US Army. The team ends up finding a Muto nest under an abandoned factory in the middle of nowhere, a site that the government of Kazakhstan has convinced the people is full of dangerous radiation. Lee and Bill are apprehensive about getting closer to the nest, but Keiko insists that they need a genetic sample. Some unsubtle foreshadowing kicks in when dog-sized bugs pop out of the eggs and kill or at least swarm Keiko, while Lee and Bill watch on, unable to help. I'm sure that these flashbacks will continue throughout the series and that we'll see more of Keiko prior to 1959. But now let's move on to the present-day storyline. The present-day story follows Kate Randa traveling to Japan to settle the affairs of her recently deceased father, Hiroshi. This takes place in 2015 after the attack of the Mutos and Godzilla. Japan now has a thriving monster prep industry. The government has set up some very practical measures, as well as some that simply give off the illusion of security. There are even some who believe that San Francisco was just a hoax, like this cab driver who has a conspiracy theory podcast. When Kate arrives at her late father's apartment looking for some answers, she discovers that she is intruded into the home of a mother and son, only for all three of them to find out that Kate's father, who is also the father of Kentaro and the husband of both Emiko and Kate's mother, secretly had two families, with Kate learning that she was the second family. Now, it's very obvious that Kate has daddy issues, and through her conversations with Kentaro as well as flashbacks, it's clear that Hiroshi was gone from her life quite a bit, which she now knows is because he had another family in Japan, but also because he was either working for or looking into Monarch, the organization that for decades has been studying the Titans. Now, at first, Kentaro attempts to protect his father's reputation, only for him to hate his father as much as Kate does by the end of the second episode. However, their hatred of their father and dislike of each other doesn't stop them from joining forces to discover what really happened to him. And in Hiroshi's office, they discover the tapes created by Will Randa that had been pulled by the tides to Japan. Because these tapes are from the 70s, Kentaro realizes that they need to enlist the help of his ex, Mei, who is a coder, game developer, and overall tech wizard. Now, if you're like me, you probably saw this cast and thought this show was going to be the typical woke crap. But these are actually fully fleshed out characters with flaws and everything, and not just a shallow demonstration of representation and inclusion. For instance, we learned throughout the first two episodes that Kate has PTSD from the San Francisco attack because she was on the bridge that was destroyed by Godzilla, and she watched as a bus filled with children went over the edge as she was attempting to help them get out. Her interest in Monarch is also a result of her panic at the bridge, and the fact that the Monarch agents who were present ignored her and the victims, seemingly only interested in documenting the presence of Godzilla. In their search for answers, the trio is discovered by Monarch, who received a hit when the classified files were accessed, and while on the run, the kids decide to visit Lee Shaw, who looks pretty damn good for a 91-year-old, which I gathered because his enlistment papers show his date of birth to be 1924, and as I mentioned, the present-day storyline takes place in 2015. Lee is located in Japan at what seems on the outside like a sublime retirement home, but in reality functions as a prison watched over by Monarch. At some point, probably after the death of Bill Randa, Lee must have tried to find out what happened to him and crossed Monarch, as his application to the retirement home was accepted in 1974, the year after the events of Kong Skull Island. Oh, and if I forgot to mention already, the character Hiroshi, the father of Kate and Kentaro, is the son of Bill and Keiko Randa. So somehow, Bill's son was able to get a hold of the tapes that his father lost to the sea on Skull Island and were picked up by a fishing boat in Japan. And now, they are in the hands of Bill's grandkids, who are teaming up with Lee Shaw. That is a lot of coincidence, especially considering Monarch's response to the files being open in the first place. You would think they would have gotten a hold of the tapes before Hiroshi did. But I've really enjoyed the show so far. It's not a giant monster fest, but this is the first entry in the MonsterVerse where I'm interested in the story of the human characters. I've always found the Monarch organization to be really interesting, so it'll be exciting to see how their relationship with the outside world develops throughout the series. Keep in mind that this takes place before Godzilla King of the Monsters, when the public suspects that Monarch has been hiding the existence of Titans from the general public all these years, which they have. It was cool to see Kurt and Wyatt Russell playing the same character in the show. I think the two actors did an amazing job of keeping the personality consistent, which of course is aided by the fact that they are very similar in appearance. Though the whole age of Lee thing in the present day storyline still goes beyond the suspension of disbelief. Unless they're going to pull out some weird reasoning like maybe he injected himself with monster blood at some point. I'd also like to see the flashback storyline progress more in between 1952 and 1959, especially because I believe the US and Russia nuke Godzilla during that period of time. But let me know what you guys think about Monarch Legacy of the Monsters in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. Thanks for watching.